Hey everyone, welcome to this brand new episode of Fenoms. In today's episode, we're hyper lucky to have Jorrit Willaert. He's based in Belgium and they raised recently a round of 1.88 billion USD, right? So that's 1.6 million euros. Jorrit, how do you feel about that round?
Hey, yeah, Mark, nice to meet you by the way again.
Same.
Very, very pleased actually. Yeah, of course, the rounds I'm very happy about. So we actually have worked in the legal due diligence space. We're probably going to go into that later. But however, we have worked in that space for a year and a half before raising the rounds, and then yeah, after raising the round, I mean, we were able to, of course, expand our team. So first we were with two founders, and then one, let's say, intern who really believed in our story and what we did, and then yeah, basically he was like our first employee. So we were at three before the rounds, and then after we expanded to 10 people. So currently we're with
Wow.
10. And yeah, that's of course like yeah, a major step. So very happy with the round.
I love that. And before we go even further, can you tell our viewers, before being a founder, what was your life like?
Yeah, definitely. So actually, I myself, I was studying computer science. So, and within computer science, you have like those typical, people call it like the side projects. It's like very, very typical actually. And computer science, you just do random stuff. You try to create, I don't know, random projects. I also did, I tried to like commercialize for example, an image app. I tried to commercialize quite some things. But however, it was more like a focus on product building instead of really commercializing something. But then I was like nearing my the end of the study, so I was going to graduate, and then I kind of realized I'm really not gonna do a 9 to 5 job. I'm like not made for that either. And yeah, I've always been into like startups since I was 15 or
Oh
something.
my God, that's
So I read,
young.
yeah, yeah, definitely. I read lots of books about it, and then yeah, I was in the middle of like, okay, am I gonna do the startup now, or am I gonna first get some, yeah, just try to get a regular job, gain some experience, and then after that do a startup. But yeah, I figured that I just wanted to do the startup, and then eventually, I actually met Jasper at that point in time, and Jasper is my co-founder of Jurimesh now, and yeah, he's also very entrepreneurial, also very tech driven, and so we basically were like two tech guys coming together, and yeah, that's actually how it all started.
Wow.
But yeah.
That's so cool. And you told us that you made some random projects, back when you was under 16 or whatever. Can you like share with our audiences what type of, projects you worked on that gave you some inspiration on how to build systems and all that?
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, some were mandatory by like our courses because I studied computer science, right? So we had, if I'm not mistaken, you have the traveling salesman's problem, and then we had like a course regarding genetic algorithms, and then we kind of tried to create an algorithm to, yeah, not really fix traveling salesman's problem because you can't fix it. It's like NP complete, but it's more yeah, it was more like about just optimizing for that. So that was one thing, and then I was like tinkering of like what can we do with just such things. There's actually here in Ghent also a funny startup who's working on exactly that. It's Timefold, but hey, that besides. So that was like one thing I've been thinking about, and then on the other hand, I also had like I've created like a Sudoku solver, or then yet another thing was actually a whole e-commerce store where I just created like from YouTube channels. I was
Oh,
like checking out how to create like an e-commerce, and then I had like an idea of like whatever, creating a certain brand, and then creating hoodies of that brand or whatever. So it was all fun and games, especially actually the building of the website and the building of the application. But yeah, the commercialization step was just to do on my own was just, I mean, you can't do it all. So at that point of time, I had to kind of like make a decision. What am I gonna do now?
interesting. And back in the days when you were building, for example, the e-commerce brand, what were your biggest mistakes that maybe you can share with our viewers?
Yeah, definitely one of the biggest was all the focus on product, kind of, in the sense of like I was a computer scientist. I just wanted to build at that moment in time. Now I don't anymore. But I mean, then I did, and I kind of underestimated the effort that's needed for commercializing Selfie. So definitely that. Marketing, same story applies. I'm not into B2C anymore. That was more B2C. But nonetheless, I mean, their marketing may be even more important, but I'm not a marketing wizard. So that's also something I've learned then. And then maybe one last thing, and that was not really for the e-commerce, but it's more like just in general, something that I've learned is that you shouldn't like underestimate the connections and the network you have, because yeah, I mean, with a strong network, many more doors can go open, of course, than just on your own. And that actually brings me to one last thing: is also having a co-founder is key. I believe you can't do everything on your own, especially if things are difficult or like you have a tough day. Then you just want to sometimes stop. While of course, if you're with multiple people or like you have a co-founder, then you are kind of being pushed on keep going. So yeah, those
Yeah, I'm
things I would.
just curious regarding the hoodies. Did you make sales? Did you get to a sale, and did you get like stuck with the logistical, part of the whole thing, or how did that go?
Nah, I mean it kind of stopped actually after the creation of the
Ah,
website and the creation of, yeah, there was like a whole back office where you could like yeah, keep track of everything. So actually it was built for scale, but however it never reached scale, like far from it.
okay.
Maybe reached whatever. I mean, I think I had one or two people who ever bought like something on it though, but yeah, it was
No,
kind of fun to just
this is
work on it.
super interesting. And while you were building the e-com, did you ever imagine that you would have a startup in legal tech?
So, of course,
No.
I mean, I still wonder from time to time how I ended up in legal tech. But eventually, I mean, I'm pretty happy that I'm here. To be fairly honest, I'm also pretty happy that I'm in B2B instead of B2C now.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, there's quite some differences there, but more than happy that definitely now in B2B. So, and there's just so much that can be done in legal, and I think that's different also with e-commerce, because in e-commerce, I mean, it's just let's say the market is different there than in legal. So yeah.
Yeah, I'm just curious. For the viewers watching that are currently in D2C or B2C, what do you see as the biggest advantages in being in actually B2B from your perspective?
Cool. Um, I think one of the B2B is more about like relationship building, of course, and the ACVs, or like annual contract values, are
Yeah.
much higher, of course, than with your B2C case. And B2C is much more about like marketing and directly
Mm.
having a more PLG approach. You kind of need PLG when doing B2C, because otherwise, PLG, by the way, product-led growth.
Yep. Thanks for that.
What while in B2B, you can, of course, I mean, I still remember our first clients. That was just like someone I reached via info ads. It's still funny if I think about it. But however, I kind of like, I jumped on a call with the guy, and there you really had to like build a relationship. You kind of had to convince the guy that we were gonna just make it happen, that we were gonna like build an awesome product, and you have to convince one guy who believes in you. While in B2C, yeah, you just have to have a whole volume before you reach yeah, I mean, a decent amount of ARRs or ACVs or whatever. So yeah, that's kind of like a big difference there.
Yeah, I think you just dropped gold. A lot of founders, when they're starting out, for example, a B2C company, they don't necessarily expect to get back into their numbers unless they have like a large investment. So it's difficult if they don't have the traction yet, right? So, and you decided to make that leap at what point of the journey, like post having the e-com?
What do you mean exactly? Like
For,
the
for example, when you stopped the e-com venture, it took
Mhm.
approximately how long for you to decide to go into legal tech?
So it was actually like coincidentally kind of like after each other, because I still remember at the beginning when I started working with Jasper, I still had like the ecom
Mm.
ID and
Oh, okay.
Eventually, yeah, sometimes I just worked a bit on that until I realized, okay, the idea with Jasper is much more worth it.
Mm.
However, the funny thing is actually when I met Jasper, we had an entire different idea. So it was more like searching through knowledge bases. That was our initial idea. You
Oh,
know Notion probably? Well,
of
it was
course.
a bit Notion AI ID. So
Mm.
just you have a knowledge base and we're gonna search through that knowledge base. And the funny thing was that was Jasper's initial ID. And yeah, I still remember we met on a Saturday evening, and on a Sunday evening he's texted me on LinkedIn. So a day after he texted me, "Hey, I have a first MVP. Check it out."
Wow.
And I still also remember, like I said, if you're gonna build it, I'm gonna sell it. So he kind of built it. So I had to start selling it, and that's actually how it all started. But
Oh
then,
my
of course,
God.
pivoted into the real legal tech.
That's so cool. You got almost forced into the journey.
Yeah, 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 exactly.
No, it's really awesome actually. And for the founders that are still kind of beginning their journeys, can you share your mindset for the decision making of going ahead and making the jump? Because if a friend bumps into you and just, hey, let's launch a business together, there's probably some thoughts racing like, oh my God, this is dangerous. What are my parents gonna think, et cetera, et cetera. So for the founders in your situation or that were in your situation, maybe you can like share what's your decision process there.
Yeah, great question. I think I had some advantages, to be fair, because on one hand, I was still a student, and at that point in time, there was still like less required. So I had 2 months till I graduated. So I had 2 months to play around to try to see if things worked out. And I also, I mean, I at the very beginning, I didn't went full in the sense of I kind of realized after 2 months I had to go to my parents and say like, hey, yeah, I have this nice idea, but however, we're not like making a lot of money out of that yet. So yeah, it's a bit hard to start a startup, because yeah, I mean, then you don't have any income. So how I did that actually is I pitched to my parents that, hey, I'm just gonna do 3 days a week freelancing. So just like actually earning pretty well on an hourly basis. That's basically freelancing. And then the other 2 days I'm gonna work on the startup. And then over time we kind of saw the traction growing, of course, and then I kind of stopped the freelancing part. But it was more yeah, it was in more phases. So with that, the risk was a bit more spread out.
No, this is amazing. And I think, the parents, they're the first barrier, right? Like when there's a young startup founder going into this war, the first, boss fight, it's literally your parents because, they've invested in your education and all that.
Yeah,
So there's a lot of stigma,
100%.
yeah, around,
100%.
talking with them. You probably maybe even have nightmares of like, okay, what are they going to say or whatever.
You
Yeah.
have to know, like my mother especially is pretty risk averse. My father got also a bit, but however, I do have to say that they were. I mean, of course, they were like, okay, you've studied 7 years, and now now you should do a job, where you earn at least something. But on the other hand, they were pretty supportive in it, and uh, yeah, they really were like open for me doing like just 3 days in a week, the freelancing, and they were really supportive. So I'm still very happy that they were so.
I love it. I love it because, a lot of founders, they get into a situation where they're not necessarily supported. Like they ask like almost for permission, but at the end of the day, like you're forging your own destiny to change the world, right? With your tech. And when you started, did you initially plan with your co-founder to stay bootstrapped or how did that go?
Great question. It's a trade-off, So we've actually been thinking about it because I kind of liked bootstrapping. It's, I mean, it gives you, in a certain way, freedom because with two, just both own the company, of course, and and you got to be honest about that as well. Is like if you get to a certain point where you can generate quite some revenue, then you kind of like are guaranteed to yeah, you can just have like a nice exit. You don't have like any liquidation preferences to investors. So it's like, I mean, it's not bad if you can get to let's say, for example, 10K RRR just bootstrapping. I mean, you're pretty
Yeah,
good because actually, yeah, you see what I mean. So
exactly.
that's something. But on the other hand, especially when we started moving into the legal due diligences, it became clear that you kind of need venture money there because it has to go that quickly. There is on the water on the on the one hand there's like competitors, so you have to go quickly. On the other hand, the tech is also changing that quickly, so it wasn't really a space where bootstrapping was applicable in. Though I really like really like the concept of bootstrapping. So yeah, it's a hard one, but eventually we chose the for the venture money.
And did you have like meetings dedicated to decide if you're gonna get investments, or was it almost like a forced process on your side?
Mm, well, a forced process, I wouldn't really say, but I mean, eventually, I think I had some people we were sparring with who also said like, yeah, I think eventually you're gonna go get some money from angel investors or VCs or whatever, and that's actually true because eventually, yeah, we were just so into startups. We were really into raising money. We read both books about it. We were, yeah, like with each other. We were always talking about it. So eventually, it became kind of like came clear that yeah, we're probably gonna be raising, and then yeah, we kind of started doing so. But eventually, we actually started too early with raising because we didn't have any clear USP yet.
Oh,
So yeah, because I said at the beginning, so we worked on the searching through knowledge bases, and then that pivoted into searching through case law and legislation. But the thing is, searching through legislation and case law, I mean, it wasn't really that exciting for investors. Case law is not accessible. There's many obstacles. It's also more a nice have than a need have. So all that made sure that actually we started pitching without a good USP. Yeah, with that, we eventually noticed that, hey, we're probably gonna have to wait a little, get a better USP, then did the pivot into legal due diligences.
mm,
And then after we got like rapid traction, then did the investment round. So yeah.
wow, I
Yeah.
love that. And for those who don't know what's a USP, just in case, it's a unique sales proposition. But yeah, and a lot of startups, when they're fresh out there starting their journey, they don't have a USP. So,
Yeah.
what's your advice for startups that are kind of still, able to pivot their USP? Like, how did you define yours?
Yeah, great question. On the one hand, at the beginning I was very afraid of going too much in a niche because you make your market very small, or like very small. I mean, you make your market much smaller, and that felt like, am I gonna be able to convince investors in that small market, like small between brackets? But however, that was like something. However, then I actually heard from it on the one hand investors themselves, and I also started like reading books on that topic, and it became clear that actually going into a very specific niche makes it much better to create a really like a point solution for there, and you just solve a problem really in that space. While if you just go very broad, then it's hard to really solve a specific problem. So that was definitely one thing. Um, and then, yeah, what was the question again? Because now I'm recapping.
Oh yeah, for sure. Just for the founders out there that are still, they have time like to pivot, or even define their USP. Like, what's the best way of doing it? But I think you definitely hit the nail right on the head right there. It's definitely gold. And I'm just curious. You've mentioned multiple times that you've read books. Like, maybe you have some interesting titles where while we're at it.
It's probably I mean, I'm just now gonna drop my favorite books, but it's for example like Super Intelligence. It's more. It's not really about startups though, but I mean it's about artificial intelligence and like how it's gonna evolve into the future. So that's definitely one. And then just regarding startups, I mean, you have the one of, if I'm not mistaken, Bob Iger from Disney. The Ride of a Lifetime, if I'm not mistaken. That's definitely one I recommend. I love Bob's how do you call it? Just his honesty. So that's definitely one. And then also yeah, the one of the investment fund, but yeah, there I don't know the name by heart anymore. But I still remember that it's like from a guy who like had a lot of troubles while building his company. But yeah, I forgot the name now.
No, it's really
Maybe.
interesting. Yeah, thanks for sharing those titles. I'm sure the founders listening in will check them out. And also, like as you were building your MVP and working on the unique sales value proposition, what was your philosophy if we should actually go ahead and raise? Did you have maybe some kind of consultations with legal teams or just a mentor in the startup sphere that kind of pointed you towards the right amounts, the right term sheet types, etc.?
So regarding the amounts, that's a very difficult one, especially also just your valuation and all that. I mean, that's a whole other topic, I guess. But however, we did have like a mentor, and that was yeah, Mark van Aken, he's called, and he actually is the CEO of Viso Quadrat, and basically what they do is they just help startups at the very beginning with how do you like navigate into a USP, how do you raise money, all that kind of stuff, and that was very useful to have like sparring sessions with him, to kind of learn just hands-on what's required to start selling a product, because yeah, we have never sold anything before, so it was all pretty new. How to raise money, never raised money before, so again, useful to have some advice there. So yeah, I mean, having a mentor is definitely something very useful, and you should probably like actively pursue something like that.
And can you tell founders that are currently mentorless, how do you go about finding one? In your case, like what was your story behind that?
Well, in my case, it's actually because during my studies, I went on a student startup trip. So we went to New
Ah,
York, and we went to
nice.
visit like for 10 days, lots of startups there. And I was just with a group of 30 students, if I'm not mistaken. And then of one of those students, then his mentor was Mark, and with that, he then kind of like referred me to Mark, and that's how we got in touch. And then yeah, I really started building a relationship with Mark.
It took how long, from the moment that you met him up until the moment where he started to actually suggest very high value, topics?
Well, actually, that's funny because with Mark is a bit of a special example there, because I still remember the first time we met, there was already like, yeah, a spark. It was like, oh yeah, okay, his advice is like so different than from other advisors, and it's just like on the one hand very handsome, but on the other hand also very inspirational. And you never left a meeting with him without like having new ideas, and wanting to do something specific. So with that, yeah. So with him, it was like very quickly, but I can of course imagine that otherwise it takes some more time.
No, this is really great. I think for a lot of founders that maybe expect that they find mentors on different websites that it can click instantly. It probably is not like that. That's not the mechanics. You need to build up a relationship and be sure that the trust is there because you're at the end of the day sharing very I'd say secretive information about your ideas that are strategic. So yeah, no. Mhm.
Yeah, I also think that's where again, once more, it's proven that the network is cannot be underestimated with her. So it Mark actually came from my network. It was just like knowing people. Then I've had like other people that I knew through Mark. So I mean, that's yet another example of why I really believe into like you're building your network basically.
Yeah, and do you remember the lowest moment that you had in your startup before even thinking about raising capital? Can you share that with us?
Before raising, yes, sure. So yes, there were quite some to be fairly honest. But however, I still remember that we had So we had our MVP, I told you earlier, and then we were working on searching through case law and legislation. Um, and so what we did is we just scraped quite some legislation, quite some case law. And I still remember that I wrote some lawyers and I went to a law firm, and it was actually a pretty big law firm here in Belgium. Better not drop the main name probably, but however, I went to that law firm physically. And yeah, I just came there. I met with like one of the partners, so it was really like pretty high up. And I started showing the product, and then yeah, the chat it already like didn't really work, and the partner was
Oh
like,
God.
"Hmm." And then he asked me to ask a specific question, which was actually, I mean, should have been pretty straightforward for the chat. And then I asked it in the chat, and then yeah, it just gave an entire wrong answer. But you have to know that was like, I think we were 1 month started or something.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, in hindsight, very funny. But at that moment, more like, oh shit, what are
No, I
um
love that.
so yeah, definitely that's one, and we'll have many others, but I mean that's one that's going to my mind now.
And did you have a moment where you're like, why am I doing this? Like, maybe I should just quit and go back to school or build, a career. Did you have these type of, thoughts in the back of your head?
Yeah, I mean, I think especially in the beginning, because then you're very small, you don't have any funding, there's no one believing in you yet. So I mean, then you wonder like, okay, why am I even doing this? Especially, for example, I still remember days when I had on the one hand to like cold call people, and then yeah, I was being like just like being whipped off. And then, for example, I had 2 minutes later a client who was not happy, who was sending me an email, and then 5 minutes later a prospect who was like in the pipeline that then suddenly dropped off and who was like, yeah, not gonna go forward. So yeah, at those moments you're sometimes thinking, of course, like, why am I doing this? But
Yeah, and I think a lot of founders are currently struggling with exactly that situation.
yeah,
What
for
would be your advice to them as how to cope with that situation? Because look, you went through the exact same thing, yet you did raise 1.88 as a pre-seed, right? 1.88 million USD. So yes, same situation, but the outcome, if you keep on going, you'll get there.
yeah, exactly. I mean, very big believer in persisting in some things. Although at one point in time you kind of had to think about pivoting, though, but that's something else. Um, But yeah, I mean, persisting perseverance is just like everything. And having a co-founder there, it makes a huge difference. If I would have been alone, I would probably have stopped and would have done something else, or would have gone work for a corporate or whatever, or maybe probably a startup though. But something like that. Um, so I believe those are probably just the my biggest points of advice there. And again, like having the ability to go spar with, yeah, not only your co-founder, but also like having other entrepreneurial friends or whoever who you can like sit together with, and then also see like, oh, you're having the same problems as me, okay, then probably it's gonna be fine. And then ideally, you of course also know some startups who already raised funds who you can go to, and for example, ask like, hey, how did you, like, you probably were ever in this situation, how did you manage to like get out of that? I think those things are just very valuable. And like, if people just send me on LinkedIn a message and ask me for like just startup advice, I mean, always happy to share. So I think that's probably like in the startup world, everyone is very approachable, and you should probably just go ask people, make some friends, and you'll see. I mean, once you get to friends, then people are more than happy to help you. So that's kind of my advice there, I suppose.
A gold, for sure. Thanks for dropping that gold. And can you tell our viewers how many no's did you receive to finally get that check in your bank account?
What do you mean? How many notes? Like, as in,
No's as in refusals
ah,
from investor. Yeah,
well, a lot, like a lot, like really a lot. And I mean, it's definitely
approximate.
something. Oh, I mean, it's probably gonna be. about 100 or something.
100.
Yeah, I think
Okay,
something like
so
that. But we also raised with quite some angels, so we went to many angels, lots of VCs as well. Although I believe that maybe we should have just did more calls with even more VCs. I don't know actually. Um,
so I'll tell you what, George. Like I just did a little bit of math, and I divided 1.88 million USD by 100 no's. So each no is worth $18,800. Can you imagine that?
it's not too bad.
It's not too bad, right? So to the founders listening, and each no is a check of 20K. You have to see it like that, okay? Because that's how it works. At the end, if you do not give up, you will have that money, right?
Yeah, but I mean, there's definitely truth in that. And ho- if I can go a little more into the funding, then I think there's a difference between doing a just a small business or whatever versus a startup, because a startup is all about like FOMO creation, if I may be entirely honest, because FOMO is pretty real in startups.
Yeah.
You have to show to investors, or like maybe like becoming investors, of like, hey, we're growing quickly, we have a great product, we especially are the right people who are gonna do that, because yeah, I mean, that's precedes, apparently it's pretty about pretty much about the people as well. And then just like the vision, it's the vision we kind of underestimated, because, for example, we started pitching to investors and we started pitching the product a lot. So we were really just showing the product, that we were like, hey, check what we have. I mean, we just had like a backbone, but there was so much more that had to be built. For example, also the numbers. I mean, the numbers were very small yet, but non. I mean, they didn't really matter that much. It was really much more about the vision. Where can it go to? What are we gonna do? What's basically? I mean, we see it's huge, and we're just gonna make that. And that's truly where I believe that it's a mindset you kind of have to change once you start pitching VCs. I guess.
Super important what you just said, mindset. I remember you saying that you were doing tons of cold calling. Can you tell our viewers if all of these rejections from cold calling trained your mind to accept also, rejections from investors? Because it's pretty much the same thing, right? How do you see that parallel?
Yeah, that's definitely like exactly the same. So it's just always rejections. The thing is, I became much more resistant to that. I mean, that makes sense, of course. So at the beginning, I still remember like if one person sent me like a reply of like, "Hey, no, I'm not interested," or it was just like, I don't know, not happy that I called him. I was like, "Oh, am I doing on the one hand something wrong commercially, or on the other hand, are we not doing the right thing with the product?" But the thing is, I mean, you probably have lots of like rejections, but if there's just like a 10% who loves your product, that's perfect. I mean, then you have a giant market. So, I mean, that's something you kind of like had to cope with, but yeah, I kind of learned that no, not everyone is gonna say yes, and you don't need everyone to say yes.
I love it. You just nailed it again. Basically, it's a numbers game, right? Like if you have the right alignment with the market, it becomes just a numbers game and you cannot give up. That's the most important thing. And can you share with our viewers your tips on how do you create this FOMO that you mentioned?
Yeah, great question. Especially because we have, yeah, for our investment round, so we have one VC and then quite some investors actually, like angel investors. And yeah, especially with so many people, you have to get them all aligned. So if there's always like those waves that suddenly people are feeling at less, they got out of the bed with the wrong foot or whatever.
Yeah, yeah.
But you have to keep them all aligned, you know. So uh, what we did, and that's probably one worked well, I think, is we sent investor updates, and with that we kept showing
Mm.
them, hey, this month we got those new clients. Hey, we got like this new traction, and that way you keep them engaged, you keep them like all on the same page. Um, so I think that was one of the biggest, probably. Yeah.
I love it. I love it. I think already, we're only 30 minutes in, and founders are probably taking notes like crazy at this point. And a quick question there. So, how do you keep them in the loop? Do you use specific tools, to kind of put them inside of a list and then just, fire it out there every week? Like, what was your tactic there?
Actually, for it was pretty basic. We used Mailer Lite. We just had like a list of investors. What we gathered from. I mean, many ways we gathered it. So on the one hand, from like websites and it, but that was more for clients though. But also like for VCs, we got it from, for example, calls. Once you do a call, then you just ask, of course, can I add you to the investor update list? And yeah, no one ever says no. Uh, just add that
Nice.
to the investor update list, and then yeah, you start sending them, especially if you're raising probably, yeah, at least once in a quarter, but yeah, ideally, of course, because it's much more time zone than ideally just once in a month, or even if you're almost closing once in 2 weeks. So yeah.
No, I think you're just at this point, like a golden machine gun. You're just shooting amazing answers at our audiences. Definitely super valuable. And for those that might confuse the name, it's Mailer Lite. That's the
Yeah,
tool
Mailer
that you're
Lite.
using.
Yeah,
Right, right.
exactly. But it's
No,
basically just like you can build a list of emails, and then there you can like send newsletters, kind of, and then we just send a newsletter of what happened in the past so many weeks, and then there.
that's so nice. I think this is extremely lacking in a lot of founder approaches right now to those that are prospecting. And they're probably not doing what you mentioned, which is after each meeting, just a simple question. Can I add you to our mailing list
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
updates? And
Okay.
that can change the direction. Do you feel like it did change the direction of your raising strategy?
Yeah, they always appreciated it because they were like, okay, I appreciate that you're willing to let me keep in touch. So that definitely on the one hand. But on the other hand, also just from investors who we haven't heard in a very long time, because yeah, for example, like you can of course with those programs, and since they have given their consent, you may send them emails, and then you can see how many times they open a certain email. And I still remember that we haven't spoken with some investors for like 6 months or so, but we just sent them our investment updates, or like our, yeah, just update of the company. And then some people we saw opening our investment update like 20 times, and then we knew we should probably call them once, and check out if they're not interested to do a check, so.
Wow, another bomb drop right there. This is such a good signal, to be honest. Like you see, they're opening it up. Let's go. Let's mail them. Let's call them. I love that. And
It's again FOMO. I mean, if they open it
yeah.
the 20 times, they're kind of like starting to yeah, start fear of missing out. So
No,
yeah.
this is so great. And do you remember, like, when you were, walking into the investment meetings, were they mostly like online or in person? How was your journey there?
um, Great question. Well, we did with quite some VCs. Those were of course typically online first, and then yeah, either we had for example with a few follow-up calls live, and then so those were then live, and then some actually gave us term sheets, but that was earlier because those
Wow.
term sheets weren't. Yeah, but they were not that great actually. So we started
Really?
gathering many term sheets at a certain
I
point.
think, Jorrit, you just hit something very, very painful for a lot of founders. You said term sheets were not that great. Can you tell us
Yeah.
what is a shitty term sheet?
Yeah, that's a hard question because actually we didn't know her ourselves. So we had fortunately a network again. So we were at the Winter Circus here in Belgium. That's like some kind of community with all kinds of startups, and then also some very very knowledgeable people. And so we went to those knowledgeable people. We showed them our term sheets, and then asked them like, is this fine for a pre-seed, or like just a company in our stage? And then it of course depends. I mean, it really depends on like how much you're willing to like. First, it was more, are we willing to raise a 300 400K for a 20% now, or are you willing to bootstrap further till we can do the real round of like at least 1 million? And that's eventually we chose for that. But that's of course like, yeah, it's not as straightforward because at a certain amount of time you just want to have an income, and then the 300K is very welcome.
But you resisted. That's important. A lot of founders don't necessarily resist. They go for the Y Combinator, they go for the Techstars, etc. And, they get interesting deals at interesting valuations, but you resisted. You're like, no, I'm going to raise a pre-seed not of 500K. I'm going to go for the 1.88, which is very strong mentally, in my opinion.
Yes, I mean me and Jasper were really thinking. I still remember that it was back in the day. It was in the summer, I believe, that we had the opportunity indeed of raising, yeah, as I said, to 300, 350, whatever. But yeah, it's just a decision you have to make, and especially then if you look up of like, okay, I mean, we're probably gonna be doing other rounds, and then we're gonna be diluting already enough. So let's just try to really get going also, and that's yet another thing, because then we realized that our pitch wasn't good enough, our USP wasn't good enough. So then it was probably better to just make a conclusion of it's too early to raise instead of like persisting at that moment. So yeah.
Interesting. Oh, I love that. And do you have interesting anecdotes from the meetings with investors? Things that happened during those meetings that you wanted to share to the audiences?
I still remember like how our valuation was being set. It was because valuations are such a hard thing, and no one ever really knows. And we were gonna be doing a CLA actually. You maybe know a convertible loan agreement. So we were gonna be doing the CLA, but then kind of yeah, there were some investors who weren't really into the CLA because that's for them not always that interesting, since they just get like a certain discount but not directly equity, and they can't like have already the huge gains in the first round. So I still remember we did the gathering with some investors, and then we sat together and we were like, okay, look, what's the problem? And they said like, yeah, we're not really into the CLA. And we were also like, hey, we're or like intrinsically we're not against the priced rounds, but however, we just want a decent valuation. That's basically what you want, of course. Yeah, and I do still remember that we had then like lots of turning around, and nothing concrete was being spoken until like suddenly the one investor then asked us like, okay, hey, what do you think that a decent valuation is? We basically came up with a number that is decent, especially for like what we raised, and the typical ranges of like between a 15% and a 25% maximum. So he came up with a valuation there, and actually at that point in time, he just agreed on it, and we set the valuation, and then all the other angel investors kind of followed. So yeah,
Oh,
that's
okay,
kind of how.
nice. So you had the lead investor, and then the rest kind of joined in on the cap table, I guess.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, there were some things that changed in between, but I mean, the one who was doing the negotiations at that point, yeah, kind of set the valuation. Yeah.
Yeah, and can you share with our founders the day that you see the money popping into your bank account? How did you feel?
Especially the days before were kind of stressful, I have to admit, because suddenly you're almost like there, but you're still like, hey, things could go wrong, or things could fall apart. Because we also had those moments, to be fair, while doing the race. So we were pretty stressed about, okay, it's not gonna fall apart, right? And then of course, yeah, once actually everything is flowing in, and then yeah, because here in Belgium, you first had to make sure the money is in your bank accounts, and then you can go to the notary. There's workarounds around that, but at least that's the way we did it. And so yeah, from the moment the money started flowing into the account, we were pretty sure that it was gonna succeed all. But I mean, it's only when it went to the notary that the deal was final, right? So Were stressful days, but very happy that those are over. To be entirely fair.
I love that. And can you share with our audience, how did you celebrate? Did you, have dinner with your family and friends? Like, how did that go?
Yeah, so on the one hand, I still believe actually that the moment the round was closed, yeah, we were just with three, right? So we were me, Jasper, and then Giel, who was
Right.
the one who started as an intern and then started as our first employee. And I still remember, I mean, we didn't really do a lot. We just call like I and Jasper were together. Hugh was at home. I called Hugh and I was like, it's around. So
Nice. Yeah.
and that was kind of it.
That's so cool.
But then actually the team expanded very rapidly, and then after that we did like we went out with a few people, and that's more how we celebrated it then. But it wasn't really a huge celebration, and in hindsight, we maybe should have done something the moment we went to the notary. We probably should have like at least went out and gone dancing or something at the evening because that
You can still do that. You can post it backwards. It's all good. And
yeah,
can you share?
that's correct.
Yeah, and can you share like at this point? Because I remember your parents, they were kind of iffy, but supportive. But how do they feel today about you running the startup with your buddies?
Yeah, I would have to ask them, of course. But the thing is, no, I feel like they are definitely very happy about it. They love going to the LinkedIn and checking out like what's happening with the company, all that stuff. So, yeah, they're of course, like very supportive still, and yeah, love to talk about the startup again to like the grandparents or whoever. So yeah,
Oh, no, this is
it's
so
it's
cool
very
because like when you begin the journey, it looks like a complete fog, right? Like you don't know if you're gonna succeed, if you're gonna lose your time, but you actually succeeded, and
well.
I'm sure,
Yeah,
yeah,
but that's debatable in a certain way because
yeah.
I still feel like okay, we did the round and all that kind of stuff, but it's still very tricky. All like I always say to my parents also because sometimes they say like, oh yeah, this and that, and I'm always like, hey, this could still fail, you know. So it's something you have to keep in the back of your mind. It's just a very risky environment, but yeah, I mean, on the one hand, I just love that, and Jasper does too, um, and yeah, of course, we're gonna make the best of it. But it's just something you have to keep in mind that yeah, we're doing risky business, you know.
I love it. No, I love it. And definitely, it's risk capital, not for nothing. It's because it is super risky and most startups, they fail. Unfortunately, that's just the numbers in the world of startups. But so far, so good. And I'm curious, at this point, the biggest mindset shift that you observe personally after raising the funds, the way that you're approaching building out your business, what are the biggest changes that you see in the way that you think?
Yeah, one of the biggest ones is of course going more from doing everything myself to yeah, just outsourcing and managing, like more to managing and like giving things to the team, you know, is something that's yeah sometimes at the beginning a bit hard of course because yeah the things you don't do yourself sometimes feel as yeah are not being done perfectly, but however that's actually not true, but you just have to get over that, I think. So that's definitely one thing. um and also ho- what otherwise, I mean, you have to see everything much bigger. You can do much more of course once you have a capital, so now we can actively go internationally instead of while at the beginning yeah we didn't have money to go to events, we didn't have money to go internationally, whatever, we didn't have the resources to start prospecting in the UK, while now we have to of course all do that. So yeah, those things for example.
Yeah, definitely scaling up. I love that. And at this point, the systems that you're putting in place, for startups that just raised, for example, a pre-seed round or even a seed round, because your round looks almost like a seed round, right? Like it's a pre-seed, but it's three times bigger than the average check for a pre-seed. So it's really awesome. And would you share like some systems that, that you're putting in place for other founders that are kind of in the similar boat as you are right now?
So I still remember. that we had our CRM, for example, was far from optimal at the moment we raised. So I do still remember that the moment we did raising and that people started coming in, that we kind of like, or at least I first tried to set up HubSpot in our case a bit better, but then I also realized, I'm not a HubSpot wizard, far from actually, and unfortunately we have Nick, for example, who's really good at HubSpot, so he then set up most of these things. Same actually with Notion. Knowledge was never was not really gathered. That was spread all over the place, or it was just in our heads, and then that also had to be like written down. So yeah,
Oh, I
that's
love
that.
that. Yeah, I think a lot of startups, yeah, when they're in your stage or even when they're raising, they're keeping everything to themselves. They don't over communicate, right? And I think that's one of the keys. It's to over communicate with the new hires so that you can set up SOPs. Just for those that don't know, standard operation procedures that are really well documented, so that it's easy to onboard. And every 30-minute counts. Like if you're jumping on a call, you can just save it by sending over a Loom. You record yourself and you send over a Loom and it helps out already. So you can invest that 30 minutes into something more productive. But yeah, and for those that don't know, like investors that are potentially listening in or clients, can you tell them the biggest pain that you're currently solving with your solution?
Yeah, definitely. So we're basically in the field of legal due diligences. So basically, when an acquisition happens, or a merger happens, or an investment round happens, then a legal DD due diligence has to be conducted. And what's that is basically it's going through all the documents in the virtual data room of the clients, or the business selling, or the business doing the investment rounds. So you have to go through lots of contracts there and check out if there is any red flag, if there are problems in those contracts. So that's like a legal DD, and we're automating the entire legal DD workflow. So we do synchronize with virtual data rooms, we structure them, we find automatic certain issues in those contracts, and then eventually we all let it flow into a legal DD report. So that's actually the solution, or the problem that we're solving.
Yeah, that's huge. I think a lot of law firms are currently being driven by dinosaur philosophies, or even if it's not the case, if someone's starting up a law practice, then all of that becomes super easy with your solution. So it's awesome what you're doing. You're literally saving law firms huge amounts of time and effort to pinpoint exactly what's going on in specific cases, which is insanely valuable in my opinion. So if there's an investor watching, you should watch for the next round here for sure. And
Exactly. Thanks for that.
no, that's a real opinion because this is, the next big thing in the legal frontiers in your niche, in my opinion, which is awesome. And what's your vision for the market? I know it's difficult to predict with AI, changing everything every 3 to 4 months. But what do you see? Where is the market going in maybe 1 or 2 years from now?
I'll speak for the legal tech market maybe, but the legal tech market, I think we came to a point where law firms are starting to realize that, yeah, we can't stay doing it the old way. Earlier it was, I believe. I think 2 years back when we started, it was much more that way, especially at the rather smaller boutique firms. I mean, there was no automation at all happening, and now they start really realizing that they basically will have to. So that is one thing, definitely for sure. Um, but however, I also think that the entire business model of law firms are going to be disrupted, because currently it's still quite a lot pay by hour. And of course, that whole model is going to change. Especially with the legal due diligences, if you're just gonna get to a certain point where you kind of have your virtual data room who comes in and a legal DD report comes out of Jurimesh, then the business models will have to change of the law firms. So yeah, there's a lot that can be changed in legal tech, and then if I can go into legal DD specific, then I think we eventually will get to a point where solutions like us will be able to just really throw out a legal due diligence report a from a virtual data room with actionable insights. And yeah, at that point in time, you, on the one hand, can start going to your corporates and PEs directly, of course. But on the other hand, you also have to think about like your insurance, because currently private equities are going to law firms because the law firms are insured, and that way their due diligence report is insured. And it would be funny to think about futures where, yeah, as a legal tech player, you start having an insurance yourself. I don't think it's on the market yet. I haven't seen any player who does that. But once you get to a point where legal tech players are having an insurance and are basically saying the legal DD report that we're spitting out is basically insured, and you can just rest assured. And if there is a fault in it, you can go to our insurance. Then, yeah, I mean, that's something for the future, I think.
Oh, I love it. And can you also share with our audience, for example, that is not necessarily in your niche, but definitely are in some type of niche? How do you, for example, A/B split test the clients that you onboard to understand how do you hone in on the right clients as you keep going? So what's your method there, for example?
I think one other thing we kind of learned was that we at the beginning we had like a solution, and we were very solution pushy of product pushy, in the sense of like we had a product and we tried to just say to them, you need our product. While something we kind of learned was, hmm, maybe we should like start doing it the way around, and more, what problem do you now actually have? And okay, maybe we don't have the perfect solution for that yet, but then at least we know what struggles you have, and then we can like tweak our product to your problem, and then start selling that product eventually. And that's something I think is somewhat an answer to your question,
Yeah.
and that was definitely another learning we had
No,
there.
it's a great answer actually. I think a lot of founders are building, but kind of blindly they think that okay, the market needs what I'm building right now, so I'm gonna go ahead and build it. But they're not actually talking with the clients. So in your case, when you're talking with clients, so far, have you been implementing almost everything they're asking, or do you feel like you need to
No,
resist a little bit? Yeah.
no, no, fortunately not. Otherwise, we would have a backlog of of an immense size. But
Right.
however, it's more like indeed. So they're requesting something, you write it down. Okay, what clients has requested what, and then you start like checking. Okay, how many times does this feature request come up? And of course, you also put it in perspective and you check out how much work is it, and how much value do we think as like a more visionary wise thinking of like how it fits into our vision better. That's what I'm trying to say. And then you kind of like make a roadmap or whatever. That's basically how we're doing it currently, and it works pretty well, I think. But yeah, I mean, it's. I'm not gonna say that the especially now with a bigger team, we had some struggles of having the customer success and then the product, and then the communication between the customer success and the product. We had some learnings there. We're doing it better now, I think. But yeah, eventually we realized, okay, you really have to be so close to the customer and understand their pains better. And for a moment we went a bit from that, but now we're again on that.
I love that. Definitely dropping gold again. Do you know, for example, you've mentioned that you wanted to branch out into the UK at some point. You're in Belgium. And a lot of founders, they start in a very specific locality, like maybe their own cities or their own country. But for you, when do you think you get signals that kind of tell you, okay,
Yep.
it's time to try out maybe another country, another region? Like, how would you approach that?
Yeah, great question. For us, actually, it was just from the beginning clear that we should directly go internationally because it's just a very international problem. Also, the markets, I mean, here in Belgium, it's nice, but the market for legal due diligences is eventually to be found internationally. So we try to experiment from the beginning with some international firms. Yeah, at the very beginning, we of course did Belgium, but then we realized quickly that we should go internationally. We had like a client in the Netherlands pretty quickly. Um, yeah, but on the other hand, it's of course much. I mean, especially for example, in law, but in other like in other whatever you call it, regions, it's also like the personal connections are very important. And yeah, your personal connections are just important to start building out a certain product and a certain relationship. And then once you have a certain relationship and you have verified some things, then maybe over time the relationships starts mattering a little less, and then you can go internationally, I guess. So yeah, that's kind of like as we did it, I suppose.
Oh, I love it. And did you have any like disaster situations where you had to scramble like crazy to fix everything so far, or that did really happen?
You mean of the product
Yeah,
of
or
going internationally?
not necessarily internationally, but while building, being in the office or with the team. Like, did you have any urgent situations where you had like a red alert type of situation?
It's been pretty fine actually, because yeah, we never had like huge mess ups or whatever. We also like have Jasper, as I said, my co-founder. He's an amazing developer. So actually, regarding the code quality, I'm pretty rest assured that it's all very well built. So that on the one hand, um, but then like big breakups, you of course have like sometimes moments where you think like, okay, the product is not yet performing well enough, like for example the accuracy or whatever. But then you, I mean, try to think pragmatically and think, okay, what is the biggest struggle here now? How can we solve that? Where do we need input from? So I think we always were able to keep our heads rather cold, I would say, personally.
Wow. Yeah, I love it. So much gold dropped in this episode. It's just insane. And as we're coming in for a soft landing, might you have some tips on the way that you've structured your life to stay healthy? Because at this point, you have a lot more responsibility, but you still need to take care of yourself. So, what's your mindset there? What's your routines?
Yeah, great question. Yeah, on the one hand, you just gotta do long days, and it's just part of the startup. That's somewhat, yeah, that's just the case. But on the other hand, I mean, it's not as bad as sometimes is being told. If you just like what you're doing, then I don't really have a problem to sit here at currently it's 8:20 in the evening. I don't
You
really
got
have
it.
a problem because I'm having fun just talking with you.
Same.
So in
Thank
that
you.
sense, it's actually not as bad as it would sound to do so much hours. And then sometimes you just gotta take some time off, because in the weekends, I mean, on the Sunday, I just like to take off, for example, or at least like in the afternoon. Then I like to just work in the weekend in the mornings, and then in the afternoon do something. So I mean, I think that's just important. Um, to be able to do this for a few years and not just for a few months. So yeah, that's my opinion on that one.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with you. You have to love what you do to just not even feel doing it, right? So amazing. And if you could whisper one thing to yourself at day one of building your
Oof.
company, what would it be?
Oh, great question. I would probably say uh, oh, yeah, be see it bigger or something. At the beginning, we were, I think, a little too shy in certain ways. Be more bold, be more whatever, like just be willing to like pick up the phone and just go out there, instead of trying to do everything from my like a student room and then hope to get some traction from there. So those were, I mean, it's, yeah, it's a hard question, but those things uh all come down basically to like just do it. And I think, yeah, eventually I did, but or like we did better. But yeah, That's probably the advice then that I would give to myself.
No, I love it. I love it. And if clients or investors, they want to reach out, what's the best way to go ahead and do that?
Yeah, so everyone can definitely reach out via LinkedIn. So Jorrit Willaert, or via mail, Jorrit Jorrit at jurimesh.com.
I love it. All right. Well, everyone, thank you so much for joining us in this Fenoms episode. I think it was amazing. If you feel like you found it valuable, please hit that subscribe button. Would really appreciate it. Also, like, comment, and of course, the little bell. Thanks so much and see you in the next one. Cheers.